I didn't realize there were nine two-win teams in the National Football League. We're going to turn Chris Carter into a GM and say, which team would you take over? We'll do it today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in to the new Locked On NFL, where you get a double dose. That's right, I said a double dose of NFL action here every single day, where we use the favorites from around the NFL, the local experts that know your team like no one else. I'm the host, the barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Chris Carter. On today's episode, here's what we're going to discuss. We got Thursday night football action coming up. We're going to take a hard look at that and see if the Bengals can save their season. In between all of that, we're going to look at some free agency additions that some playoff contenders made. We're also right in the middle going to look at the AFC West and the surprising teams that have made that division a possible three-team playoff outfit. And then you're going to, like I said at the top of the show, we're going to make Chris Carter the GM. 9 teams have 2 wins. That is a lot to be at 2 wins in November. So we'll make sure we get to that and entertain you guys today. We appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day, for being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you tune in again to Locked On NFL tomorrow morning for the Madman Tyler Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's episode is sponsored and brought to you by, as are all of the Thursday episodes, it's Crossover Thursday around the network, and it's presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Chris Carter, are you surprised that there are 9 teams? I didn't even think about it. 9 teams with 2 wins at this point. Only 2 wins.
I'm not surprised as much as I am because there are some of these teams I thought would be pretty rough this year. I'm surprised by who some of them are and who some of them aren't. You know, I thought the Broncos would be a bottom feeding team this year. Right. They're 5-4 and right in the playoff race. You know, I didn't think the Saints would be 2-7 after being 2-0. I did think the Panthers would be in that conversation. I did think the Raiders would be in that conversation. I thought the Jaguars, the Titans would be in that conversation. I thought the Browns would be a little bit better than 2-7, but I did think that they'd be the bottom feeders of the AFC North. And I expected the Patriots, the Dolphins, maybe not. So maybe there's some teams in there that I'm a little bit more surprised at being there. But there are quite several of these teams I was like, hey, this is going to be a rough year for them, and they're experiencing that right now.
No doubt about it. So on the Peacock and Williamson show, they had a very interesting conversation. If you get a chance, go over and check that podcast out, because the whole show was good, but I could not stop listening to the first 6 minutes. I got a clip here of Peacock and Williamson where they talk about what team would you rather take over if you're the hot GM. And Chris Carter, when we come back, I want you to run with it and tell me if you agree.
It's time to open up the Peacock and Williamson Week 10 mailbag. There's 9 2-win teams in the NFL. Which one would Matt Williamson want to become the GM of going forward? We talk a lot about the good teams in the NFL, so let's spend some time talking on they all offer you the job after you interview. Matt Williamson, the hottest GM candidate in the league.
That might happen.
Which job do you take and why?
So we have 9 teams: Miami, New England, Cleveland, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Vegas, the Giants, Panthers, Saints, and that's it.
Yeah.
I went the Patriot job.
I can give you the background and tell you exactly why he said it. He says they have a boatload of cap space, and I think he likes what he's seen so far from Drake May.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer, is the Patriots, because right now they're slated, they're in position to get a really high draft pick. Drake May is a young quarterback that seems very moldable, that you can make him into that. And like he said, you have a ton of cap space for next year and the year after. So the Patriots have when I'm a GM, I want to know, do I have draft picks moving forward, or did you trade them all away to get Deshaun Watson? So that's one factor. B, do you have how locked in are you on a lot of these veterans that you're not going to want to keep around because you have a rough culture right now? And the Patriots check both of those boxes in spades. They got their first round pick, and they're right now, if the draft was today, they would be the number one overall pick because of tiebreakers right now. So yeah, I take the Patriots. I have a young quarterback that will be just basically he's working with his new coach. That's the other factor here is that, you got a coach that's young and that he's developing there. So you got something that's going on there. But then I can go get him some reinforcements in free agency. We can and then we can also weed out who we want that is already on our roster, sign those guys to long-term deals. But those are the primary factors that I look at this. I also look at organizations as far as how they're run. And we've seen the Patriots be successful. They know what it takes. They know the patience that's needed to be able to find a winner. I would never go to the Panthers. I'm sorry. As long as David Tepper's the owner there, I'm never touching that organization as a GM, as a coach, as anybody, because I know that my job isn't safe. The Jaguars, they're a mess. They're tied to Trevor Lawrence. The Saints, they got a lot of salary cap issues. The Browns are still tied to Deshaun Watson for $72 million for 2 more years after this. The Raiders, I think they have a lot to clean up. But yeah, if I was one person, if I was looking for one team as a GM right now, the Patriots to me seem like the clear 2-win team that I would take over.
Yep. And when you think about what they have to do, they have to get their offensive line and they have to get playmakers outside. So what they have done, I think Christian Gonzalez is a real good player at corner. They have players at every level on defense with Keon White and Christian Barmore. They really have a lot of solid defensive parts. And because they have all of that cap space, I think the number one offensive lineman is going to be on the market is Trey Smith from the guard from Kansas City, because Kansas City probably can't afford to re-sign him because they're paying so many other people. There's no reason they shouldn't outbid everybody for him. And then with that top 3, top 4 pick, they can take a left tackle. So they can fix that offensive line unit really, really fast. And then with those 2nd and 3rd round picks and the additional cap space, they can also go out and maybe get a T. Higgins in free agency, and they can really, really touch it. So I'm agreeing with both of y'all. I like them. I think the model for everybody is Detroit. And I know everybody's talking about that a lot, but people are looking at the Detroit team and realizing that they built it with toughness. They built it with line of scrimmage play. And now they're supplementing it to help themselves with Aiden Hutchinson being out. They made an acquisition at the trade deadline to bolster their claim as the best team in the NFC.
Our breaking Detroit Lions news here on Election Day. An early morning trade between the Lions and the Browns. Detroit getting a pass rusher that they desperately need, sending a 5th-round pick this year, a 6th-round pick next year to the Cleveland Browns in exchange for Zadarius Smith. 5 sacks on the year. Big guy that can get to the quarterback and has experience in this division. Played for both Green Bay and Minnesota. He wants to get a shot at the Packers as they've got a history. Zadarius Smith and Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. But regardless, Lions need an edge rusher. They go out and get one here on trade deadline day, acquiring Zadarius Smith. They also get a 7th-round pick back from Cleveland, again sending a future 6th-rounder and next year's 5th-rounder. More later today on Locked On Lions.
Chris, it's a position that a lot of teams aren't in, but I envy, and we'll talk about the Steelers later that also are in the same position. To be a good team and to be able to get quality veteran at the trade deadline and basically pay next to nothing for them is ideal team building, in my opinion.
I think that part of what the Lions have done is, it's something that I said the Steelers have been trying to do, they have adapted to the new way that the NFL has gone. A lot of teams wanted to be pass happy. A lot of teams wanted to get into the Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen race of let's just become a team that loves to throw the football. We throw it off and we throw it quick. We throw it fast because we have a superstar quarterback, and that's what the new NFL is going to be, baby. And as I said before, I'm like, hey, get in it. If you're late to that arms race, the best thing to do is to counteract it, because guess what? Defenses are now working against that. And now you're seeing Patrick Mahomes isn't throwing up the numbers that he used to throw up for the Chiefs anymore, because teams are starting to tool themselves to get used to those things. So what are offenses starting to do? They're running the football. They're playing a balanced attack. Jared Goff is extremely efficient, but he's not putting up huge numbers. Like, no one's rushing to get Jared Goff in fantasy football right now because he's not throwing up 500 yards and 6 touchdowns every game. He's throwing up maybe 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, but that's enough for their offense because they're running the football so well. And that's what the Lions got ahead of, and they were able to build, and they were able to do that. And now they're doing it very well. And now they've added to their defense with Zadarius Smith. They've made moves. They've been fitting this, and now they're at the top of the heap when it comes to the new age of the NFL. Now, the amazing thing about the Chiefs is they're also at the top of the heap, and they were the leaders of that new age of football that not too long ago. And so it's another point for Andy Reid to say, like, hey, not only were they the best at the throwing game, now they've switched it up, and they're right up there with the Lions. And I had the Lions as my favorites to win the Super Bowl at the start of the year because I thought that their roster was constructed right and they were doing the right things to be part of that new age. But like Chiefs Lions, if they were meeting the Super Bowl, I think that would be an amazing game by two similarly styled teams. And if you're looking at your team and you're thinking what's going wrong, you need to be looking at those teams right now and say that's the future that's coming for the NFL at this point.
Gospel. That's right, man. Chris Carter running it down for us. And I agree 100% with all of that. We're going to talk about the AFC West and the AFC North. We had a little group therapy session on our AFC squad. And the Chargers and the Broncos have kind of thrown the back end of the playoff picture in the AFC into a little bit of a, where did that come from? We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you by Pre-Alcohol. That's right, by ZBiotics. Look, let me tell you how this goes, man. Pre-Alcohol probiotic drink by ZBiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's the blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Wifey went to Cancun, and she went to Vegas. Shout out to my pockets, but that's okay. And it worked. She went with her friends, and she felt really, really good after having a real good time the night before, and her friends, not so much. So go to ZBiotics/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On NFL at checkout. ZBiotics is back with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. All right, running it down here as we continue with Locked On NFL with our expert of the day. That is Chris Carter, Locked On Steelers. Also, you can check him out over there. Chris, you guys had group therapy on the AFC squad. I wasn't able to make it the other night, but a lot of talk about the playoffs, a lot of talk about divisions, and a lot of new voices in this playoff discussion. We're going to hear from one of them right now. Yeah, right. Playoffs. My man, David Drogemeyer. Also, a little shout out with Chris Carter. I want you to hear what Chris Carter says when David Drogemeyer starts talking about Jim Harbaugh.
Well, and let's throw it now, obviously, to David here, Locked On Chargers. Look, the Chargers have been a team that's they haven't been talked about as much, even though they're 5-3, right? Obviously, they had the early season bye. Justin Herbert had the injury. They're playing really good football, and Herbert's balling. And right now, you have 3 teams in the AFC West that are in the playoff picture as it currently stands. Your thoughts here on obviously the Chargers and where they're at right now?
Well, it's nice to have a legitimate head coach for the first time in 25 years. I'll tell you that. They've had 3 first-time head coaches back to back to back trying to figure out how to coach at the NFL level. And finally, we have a grown-up in the room. Jim Harbaugh has entered the chat, and for the first time in a very, very long time since Marty Schottenheimer, they have an identity. They know a brand of football that they want to play. They're playing excellent defense. They have the number 1 scoring defense in the entire NFL, giving up less than 13 points per game. So when you have an excellent defense and you have a elite quarterback who is not turning the ball over, who is really doing a great job of pushing the ball down the field with, probably a group of wide receivers that, probably one of the worst in the league. I think we can sit here and say they're greatly overperforming. And a lot of that has to do with the offensive scheme, with Jim Harbaugh.
Stop right there. He said Jim Harbaugh. That's where I want to focus on. It's almost like they had foresight with the way that the league was going to be going, and now everybody admits that the league is this way, and it's like, okay, well, who can we hire? But no, they made this hire before. They made the hire before everyone came to the realization that this is where the league is going. And he said a word that I want to hang on, and you know this from the team that you cover. Folks always say culture. Folks always say scheme. Folks always say all of these things, but he said football brand. I think the word brand is what it is, because that is your identity, who you are. And it's like you don't have to wake up and go put brand on. That's who you are when you wake up and when you sleep. And I think Harbaugh has really, really changed the Chargers for the better.
Yeah, I think that's where, like, you know, and I think the Chargers realized, like, hey, we've been trying to make Justin Herbert this high-flying quarterback. Let's give him what everyone else is getting right now. Our defense is loaded. Let's bank on that. Let's try to develop a balanced passing attack with a run game. Let's beef up this O-line. They went and got Joe Alt. They already had Slater. Like, you know, they did the things to say, hey, Justin Herbert, we're not gonna ask you to carry us. We're gonna ask you to make the smart plays at the right times and be a leader in those moments. And you know, in fact, I think the Chargers, they saw what the Lions were doing. They saw what the Steelers are doing. They saw what a lot of these teams that are starting to do better were doing at the time, and that was loading up in the trenches, but getting stronger there, developing the run attack, because now defenses are curtailed to stop the passing game. They got quicker players, they got faster players, but they don't got beefier players. They don't got run stuffers. And so, yeah, the Chargers have gotten that, and now they're 5-3. And now here's the thing: you can still be a great offense if you are a balanced attack that leans a little bit more on the run side, but still have a talented quarterback. That quarterback doesn't go to waste. It's just that now you're saying, hey, instead of doing this 40 times a game, do it 25 times a game. And when you do that, and if you're efficient in those numbers, you could be just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, because now people can't just sit on it and look for it. So, yeah, I think that the Chargers were right. We're smart to do that. I think they're reaping the benefits. I'm not so sure how far this Chargers team will go, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to make this franchise the best contender it's been, I think, maybe in its history over the next few years.
I think it'll be a case study too. When you look at teams like that and then look at teams like Miami, case study is, what do you get first? All right, do you want to be the team that has all of these high-flying players and like my man Matt Williams says, all these Ferraris and those dump trucks? Do you want to be that and then try to incorporate toughness, or do you want to lead with toughness and then go add those pieces? Because you can find great skill players that are also tough, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Hines Ward, like Anquan Bolden. Those guys get overlooked a lot of times. One team that's playing that way also, well, two teams, the Broncos that you just mentioned. Let me ask you this real quick before we move. Most likely to get three teams in the playoffs, the AFC West or the AFC North? The Bengals would have to win tonight, and we'll preview that game in segment 3, but AFC West or AFC North? Here's
my thing. Right now, you look at the records and you say, well, maybe the AFC West, because the Broncos are 5-4, because the Chargers are 5-3 and the Chiefs are 8-0. In the AFC North, you got 2 6-win teams, the Steelers and Ravens. They look pretty solid. But the big question here are the Bengals. Yeah. Are the Bengals for real? And that's something that I have been asking myself and asking on our shows for about a month now, because they opened up the season. They lost to the Patriots in embarrassing fashion. They barely lost to the Chiefs. They barely lost to the Commanders. They barely lost to the Ravens. So 3 good teams that they lost to in very close fashion. Then they got destroyed by the Eagles. That was not a very close loss. Right. But all of their wins, Panthers, you should beat that team. Giants, You should beat that team. Browns, you should beat that team. Raiders, you should beat that team. So you are 4-5 with 4 wins that you absolutely needed to have. And your 5 losses are a team that you should have destroyed in the Patriots, and then 4 good teams, 3 that you hung with, 1 that destroyed you. So who are the Bengals is my question. Are they the team that can beat up on cupcakes?
Exactly.
Or are they the team that can go out and beat the dogs? And they have a chance to prove that they're the latter in these next 3 games. They have on the road, they have the Ravens tonight on Thursday Night Football, which we'll preview. Then after that, they're on the road again for Monday Night Football. I think it's Monday Night Football for the Chargers. In Los Angeles, another good team that we just talked about. They'll get their bye week, and then they're back home playing the Steelers. So that's 2 6-win teams and a 5-win team. If they get through that stretch at least 2-1, then we're talking. But if they go through that stretch and they only win one game or they get swept by those opponents, the Bengals, I don't want to hear any more about Joe Burrow and this and that. They have to do a restructure, and they have a lot of struggles. But if they can go 2-1 and they can get there, because if they're 2-1 through that stretch, they're 6-5, and they got 5 games left against the Cowboys, Titans, Browns, Broncos, Steelers, and that could be where they make their hay and they get back in the playoff race. But Joe Burrow said that the window's still open for them. In these 3 games, they got to prove it. If they don't, they can close that window, they can close the door, and then maybe they should close the door entirely on Zach Taylor.
Ooh, I love it. Close the door on Zach Taylor. Well, in today's NFL, you can get a team to a certain point, but if they ever get the inkling that you're not the guy to take them to the next level, it'll be like, hey, man, we appreciate you. I think the Jaguars are going to do the same thing with Doug Peterson. 2 straight 9-win seasons. It's going to be like, I appreciate you, dog, but you can't get us to the next level. And Zach Taylor might also be the person that happens to next. All right. A little bit of a trade that we'll talk about at the top of segment 3 before we get to our preview. Those Broncos we talked about traded a player to a team that nobody thought was going to be in this situation about a month ago, and that's the Arizona Cardinals, who actually lead the NFC West. Yeah, I said it. The Arizona Cardinals are leading the NFC West. We'll discuss that and more in our final segment here on Locked On NFL. Today's episode is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Man, you need to get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, the game action, and everything else all from one page without having to change the page that you're on. And refreshing can be hard, especially if you're watching the game like in a stadium or something like that, right? All right, so here's what you do. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Now, you got to win, but still, $150 if you win a $5 bet. Sounds good to me. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Also, today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Prize Picks. Listen, daily fantasy sports, Prize Picks is the best. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars awarded in winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just got to pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to $100 in cash. Run your game all season long in FanDuel. Now, I know I said that there were 10 million members. You ain't playing against all of them. You're just playing against Prize Picks, the system. That's right. Whatever they project, all you got to do is say more or less and win between 2 and 6. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Make sure you use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5. All right, segment number 3 here, getting going with my man Chris Carter. We were talking about the AFC West. The AFC West versus the AFC North. Chris makes a bunch of great points. I think the best team is still, well, on record at least, the Chiefs. It looks like everything's going to run through Arrowhead. But Denver has played really, really tough. They're so deep, in fact, defensively, that they traded a dude, Baron Browning, an edge rusher, who's kind of a spot player for them, who's going to probably play a lot more minutes over at Arizona. Arizona, speaking of which, they lead the NFC West, and that's a bit of a surprise. We're going to hear from Cody Roark here of Locked On Broncos about that deal, and then we'll talk and see if Arizona is another one of those teams that Monty Austin-Ford is building, just like Detroit, just like the Chargers, if they're taking the old school mantra and building that team.
For the NFL trade deadline, the Denver Broncos have made a move sending pass rusher Baron Browning to the Arizona Cardinals. This is Cody Roark, host of Locked On Broncos. What does this mean for the Broncos defense going forward? Baron Browning sent to the Arizona Cardinals in exchange for a 6th-round pick. The year not yet determined on that, but Denver's looking to acquire capital. This is a big reason why. The Broncos have been very pleased with the emergence of Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito at outside linebacker. They've been pleased with third-round rookie Jonah Ellis, and they like undrafted rookie free agent Dondre Tillman. Barron was in the last year of his deal here in Denver. Now he'll have a chance to go to the Arizona Cardinals, where the talent is still there. He might have an opportunity to contribute big time and maybe earn himself an extension over there. But Denver going younger, acquiring more capital, especially with the NFL free agency coming up, they may look to get an extension done with Jonathan Cooper. For more reaction, go check out the breaking news episode, Lockdown Broncos, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube.
Very intentional trade by Denver, understood, well explained by Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and he also hosts the AFC Squad Show. Make sure you check him out. Arizona. We were talking about Arizona, not on the Friday version of the NFL show with Matt Williamson. We were talking about Arizona just having a good plan, but not having talent. I think this helps them, man, and they're leading that division right now. Probably by default a little bit because of injuries, but hey, that's not their fault. I like what Monty Austin Fort and that crew's doing out there.
Yeah, I feel like if we try to put the Cardinals in that category of, oh, they're embracing the new age, I don't know if they're doing that just yet, because they need to put more into it. You know, I really like the Paris Johnson pick. You know, Kelvin Beacham's a longtime veteran. I've covered him before because he was in Pittsburgh. You know, they've gotten those guys, but like, and James Conner, I've covered him. He's a great dude, but you know, Marvin Harrison Jr. is certainly a pick in the right direction there. I don't know if they've embraced this mentality yet, and that's why they're 5-4. Because also on the flip side of this, here's the other thing: when you're a team that runs the football and does that balanced offense, you also need to have a defense. And right now, their defense is giving up the 19th most points, the 25th most yards. They're 24th against the pass, 22nd against the run, and I don't see it. And I think that, like, right now they're atop of a very muddled NFC West right now. They're 5-4. The Rams and Niners are 4-4. The Seahawks are 4-5. I don't think they're going to win that division. I think one of those Rams or Niners teams are going to emerge ahead of them. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Kyler Murray is going to really turn it on. Him and Marvin Harris are going to take over the world. But I don't know if the Cardinals are the team that's one of the faces of embracing the new era just yet.
They might be, now that you say that, they might remind me of the Brian Daboll Giants that first year when they were winning all those games and people like, it's not sustainable, trust me, you know. And now you see it's kind of falling apart, although the quarterback is a little bit better than that. All right, big game tonight. We continued to talk about AFC North versus AFC South. Well, there's an AFC North battle tonight. The Ravens have beaten the Bengals 3 straight times. 3. I don't expect it to not be a 4th time. One of the elements that people aren't talking about is the screen game with the Baltimore Ravens. Everybody just talks about, you know, the RPO game with Derrick Henry and then with Lamar and him pulling it down. Justice Hill has been big for them whenever Henry is in the game because it gives them a different element, and it's an element that people aren't ready for. Here's Locked On Ravens host Kevin Oestreicher talking with longtime Raven Kadri Ismail.
The screen game is got to be the biggest underrated bright spot on the offensive side of football. I've not seen. So the 19 season, it was just flat out red zone dominance. Every time we in the red zone, we scored. This season, it's the art of the screen game that just like continues to just blossom.
It must be debilitating, not from a personnel standpoint, that when Derrick Henry just runs for 13 yards and comes out of the game, Justice Hill comes in, and not even from a substitution standpoint, but from a mentality standpoint, that you got to gear yourself up to tackle this battering ram. And now they got Darren Sproles Jr. over here catching screen passes. That's a hard thing to go to from one play to the other.
If you can get the screen game going, it gives you such an advantage because it's such a thing that you have to be disciplined and ready for. And when you have the weapons that the Ravens have at their disposal, it's annoying. Like if you're a defense, you're like, oh man, we got to worry about that. We got to stop Derrick Henry. We got to stop Lamar Jackson. We got to cover Zay Flowers. You got to cover Deontay Johnson. Oh, and that Mark Andrews dude is annoying. Yeah, like they got to. It's smart. It's smart how they're setting those things up, and so it forces your linebackers to be very attention to detail. Like one thing that great offenses I think do as far as their scheme, they force you to honor so many different things. They force you to look at this. They force you to look at that, and so while you're worried about the 10 different variables of the keys that you have to read as an inside linebacker, as a safety, as a corner, whatever you play, you're more likely to trip up on one of them and before, oh wait, that's I looked at the wrong thing on this play. And that's what the Ravens are trying to do with their offense, and it's working. They're one of the best offenses in the NFL. It's why they're one of the best teams in the NFL. It's why I thought they were going to be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl going into this year. So for me, I'm still looking at the Ravens as far as an offense that's going to be lighting it up. And I'm really excited for this Thursday night matchup because the Bengals still have an offense that can put points up, but their defense is atrocious. The Ravens defense isn't atrocious, but it's been missing a lot of opportunities. The Ravens just eked out the Bengals the last time these two teams played. I'd be intrigued to see if the Bengals can return the favor.
All right, so I think we both are picking Baltimore tonight because they've lost enough games that they should. You can't be a top 3 team and keep losing games. They lost 3 games and 2 of them they shouldn't have lost. So you're not gonna lose a 3rd game that you shouldn't lose and then put yourself in a precarious situation. I've been setting this up since the trade deadline. Since I saw Baltimore and Pittsburgh going tit for tat and adding people at the trade deadline, I say, ooh, this gives me a chance to get Chris Carter to cook for a couple of minutes on what we know is coming. There's a war in the North. There are 2 games left between the Ravens and the Steelers. And I already think that this is the best rivalry in football. I really do. Chris, tell me how you see it happening. Who's done enough? How do you think this thing's going to play out between those two? Because I'm looking forward to both of those games, and I'm not going to schedule anything around it. I'm going to be right in front of the TV.
Yeah, as you should be. I think that this is going to come down to which team can be more of the identity that they want to be faster. I think the one thing that Steelers have on their side is their defense has shown that they can be the defense that they want to be this year. They can take away the things that you do well. They can do that. And if they're healthy, they're a problem. And I think that the Steelers defense is getting very healthy very quickly. And the addition of Preston Smith is just a chess piece into a team that has 3 queens already in their on their chessboard. And I think that's where the Steelers might have an advantage over the Ravens. They know how to beat Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has not beaten the Steelers since 2019. And when I say 2019, I mean that was the game where Mason Rudolph was knocked out by Earl Thomas, and the world got to know a professional duck caller who came in and played for the Steelers and got them to overtime. And it took a Juju Smith-Schuster fumble for the Ravens to win that game. The Lamar Jackson has not destroyed the Steelers once in his career. Maybe he does it this year because he's got Derrick Henry, and we'll see when that comes. But the Steelers defense, there's one team that they gear up for more than anyone else. It's the Ravens. It's why they're 7-1 against the Ravens in the last 4 years. I'm not saying they're going to sweep the Ravens this year. I think they could very well split with the Ravens, but I think with the teams that are left on both teams' schedules, I could see the Steelers going down the stretch and eking out the Ravens by a single game here, but the Ravens could return the favor. They could do that to the Steelers. These are 2 tough teams. These are 2 good teams. I think they're 2 of the better teams in the AFC, right behind the Chiefs. And I think that it's going to come down to who gets their style to the field faster. The Ravens have that offense, but can they get that defense up to stuff? Does Tre'Davious White make a difference, or do the Steelers defense, does that take things over? And can their balanced offense win the day? So it'll be really fun watch. And hey, you'll get an inside look at all of it because Hard Knocks is covering all of the AFC North teams in the final 2 months of the season. So, they're already taking up a parking space in the Steelers parking lot. Thanks, guys. But in all seriousness, like this game tonight, if the Bengals win, the Bengals put themselves back into this AFC North conversation, and now it's a 3-team thing. But if the Bengals lose, everyone's going to be looking at that November 17th in Pittsburgh, Steelers, Ravens. Who comes out of that? Because who comes out of that game on top might be the team that everyone's looking at like, hey, that's the AFC North team that you got to beat.
Hey, man, you did something you didn't even realize. When I was in the military, there were 2 things my instructors did that made you pay attention. They would tap on the podium, or their voice would change and go, did you know that? And that's what you did. You say, they haven't beaten them since 2019. You turned into that dude that be on the murder shows at night, man. I'm thinking like Robert Stack or something. I'm like, damn, man, you made me pay attention. But you always pay attention here on Locked On NFL. Chris Carter always comes through with the knowledge every single Thursday, and we'll continue to do that. Make sure you tune in to Locked On NFL, the double dose. Tyler rolling in the morning. We call him the Madman. I couldn't even remember his name because I just know him as the Madman. He'll hit you with a double shot of espresso. We both use local experts. You slide by the barbershop, and this is what you get, man. You get great coverage from around the NFL twice a day. Make sure you tap in wherever you get your podcast. Chris Carter, I know you got to go to work, man, and I got to do the same, but it has been fun. Great show as always. We appreciate you. Thank you. We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.